What does filmed for IMAX mean? It isn't just a movie that'll look great on IMAX's screens. It means that hiding from a sandstorm feels like fear in every flicker. And every triumph is felt in every sound wave. And the things we've only imagined, you can truly experience those too. That's what filmed for IMAX means. Get tickets to experience Dune Part 2 now and IMAX's exclusive expanded aspect ratio.
Okay, everybody, welcome to the latest episode of All Too Real 2. My name is Michael Cullen II, and with me, as always, is
Sesame McConaughey and Carta.
McConaughey and Carta. Alright.
Yeah, alright.
Yep. You are the McConaughey.
The McConaughey. Hey!
Ho!
That's
Hey!
bad.
Ho!
You know, it would have been really cool if Matthew McConaughey was in the movie that we're going to talk about. That would have been a lot cooler if he was.
Yes, it would. If anybody from the cast of Dazed and Confused was in this movie, it would be better.
Yes. Even the one dude who just like talks about getting high the entire time, like
Roddy Cochran.
I don't know.
Yes.
I guess they all were.
Anyways, today on the show, we are covering a religious film that has been called the Christian version of Saw. Did you see Saw?
Like seesaw? Yeah, I used to go on the seesaws. No. Oh no, you mean that? No, yes, I have watched the movie Saw. Unfortunately, well, the first one was okay.
Yeah.
Saw 2, and I think the final Saw before they made the Jigsaw backstory movie or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Not a huge fan of that style of
Yeah.
horror. I think it's just gratuitous when it comes to gore. Doesn't really have much. Well, it does have suspense, but the suspense is all about whether something's going to happen violent, as opposed to, like, let's say, Halloween or a Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which did have some violence in it, but a lot of it had to do with just running away and that kind of thing,
Yeah.
Trying to escape the killer. But to each their own. But yeah, I like the Christian version of Saw, because I didn't think I would ever utter the phrase the Christian version of Saw in my entire life. But
Yeah.
here we are, so
I mean, the next Saw movie, I hear, Jigsaw comes back and he just abducts people and makes them watch this movie.
yeah, that's it. That's the whole
That's
thing.
the whole movie.
Yeah, that's it.
You just have people captured giving a commentary on the movie The Reconciler.
Yeah, and they gotta just keep watching it on a loop until they reconcile the fact that they're watching The Reconciler.
Yeah, I had to reconcile things with myself while I was watching this movie so I could get out of watching the rest of it, but I still had to watch it, so it was kind of hard to do. So this movie came out in 2015. It was one of, if not the last movie of former WWF star Roddy Piper.
That's sad.
Yeah. He had, like, 2 scenes in the whole movie.
Yeah, I know, but they made him like he was one of the stars.
Yeah,
like starring. It's like he was in like literally.
I mean, well, he is the biggest name in the cast, so.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
And I mean, I was reading online in the trivia that they shot this movie for 11 days. 3 of those days, at the beginning of the movie, they shot Roddy's scenes, and then the rest of the movie they shot after that. So,
I mean, yeah, it shows.
Yeah, and they shot them all, and yeah, I got other things to say about that later. But anyways, yeah, I will say, Roddy's not a bad actor.
No, he's not.
Not necessarily good in this movie though. But so this film came out in 2015. It was directed and co-written by a guy with a really cool name, Sean Justice.
Ooh.
Yes.
I doubt that's his real name, but
I don't know, but it's like, I mean, it might be a TV show that follows Judy Justice on Freevee or something, but yeah. Judge Judy's new show. Yeah, he's directed 8 things. Let me see, what has he directed? He's directed a movie called The Murder of Innocence, Out of Darkness, The Reconciler, and then 2 music videos for somebody named Jan Michael Looking Wolf, and a movie called Going the Distance. Yeah,
I think I've heard of that one.
Actually, it's probably another movie called Going the Distance you've heard of. That was actually well known. But this is another what appears to be low budget Christian film.
Yeah.
As well as A Murder of Innocence.
That's probably an anti-abortion film.
Actually, based on the true story of a community is rocked by the double homicide of a prominent couple, and the local police struggle to find the killer. As darkness settles over the town, Albert, the new resident pastor, must help his church and family overcome the aftershocks by providing stability, healing, and hope, while his wife, Amy, must come to grips with her own fear through her faith. I mean, that could be interesting. Yeah, so... Okay, this movie. Yeah. Initial thoughts.
It exists. I don't know, man. I kind of liked it just because of how bad it was. In some parts, interesting concepts. It was short, so that was good.
Yeah.
You had a long intro, which a lot of these movies tend to have a way too long of an intro. Like you don't even have intros that long in Marvel movies. Which
it seems like I mean, and I mean, I'm probably guilty of this in movies that I've produced or worked on or anything in the past too, where lower budget movies tend to have these like long opening credits that just are pointless.
I wonder why that's the thing.
I think it's to pad out time.
Oh, okay.
That's my. I mean, 'cause there's also like in this movie and in other lower budget movies that I've seen, Christian or otherwise, there's always this a lot of lingering shots and stuff like that, or scenes that really could have been cut down. Like this movie probably could have been done in 45 minutes.
Yeah, with all the. I don't know. I mean, maybe I was just kind of like in a weird state of mind, but I kind of just liking like the open space of some of the.
Oh yeah, I understand. I'm just saying, like, this concept sort of could have been like done in an episode of Criminal Minds. Not that that's what it was, but you know what I mean. Like, if it was really like a Saw thing, but it's not. But you know what I mean. Like, but the whole story, you could have gotten rid of a lot of meat that they had on the bones that they didn't necessarily need.
Yeah,
that's my initial thoughts on it. So.
But yeah, other than that, just like very bizarre concept because I mean you got Jigsaw. Okay, so his whole thing is that he kidnaps people who have either done a lot of bad things or are just like at the end of their rope, and then he puts them through this sort of like harrowing experience where it's they can technically get out of, which some of the later Saw movies, you have someone who takes over, the mantle, but he's just sadistic and just makes it so you can't even escape the traps at all. He just wants to torture, kill them. But Jigsaw, per character, his whole thing was, he wanted people to like basically want to be alive, but he was very crazy in how he did it, but that was kind of his thing where technically
but overall he's a nice guy, and
no, not really. He's crazy.
Wait.
Well, he's violent and crazy at the same time. Crazy and not violent, but he's both, and because the whole story is that he had a terminal illness and pretty much nobody helped him, and so way of him is sort of exacting his revenge / giving other people a chance to appreciate life. He put him through these harrowing experiences where technically you could get out of. It'd be very painful, but he designed them very specifically that you could get out. It wasn't like a trick.
Yeah.
So the Christians who made this movie were like, it'd be really cool if we did the same exact thing, but without all of the torture devices. And instead we're going to make it into like a sort of like Christian, or at least like some type of spiritual / religious person who is going to abduct people, which is a felony, I have been told, and puts them to sleep.
Yeah, I found that out the hard way. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, puts them to sleep somehow. I don't know exactly. And then they wake up. These two guys wake up in like this sort of storage warehouse room area, with like pallets, wooden pallets, and stuff like that. And which is just like how the beginnings of Saw movies begin. And first, it's the younger dude wakes up and he's trying to figure out a way out. Then the sort of middle-aged guy, he gets up, after the young guy's like prodding him with like a cane, and he wakes up and he's like, "Where are we?" Blah blah blah, all this stuff. So then they're like both trying to, figure out how to get out, or why somebody would do that to them, etc. And so like the older guy, like middle-aged guy, he's like a journalist, and he's like, I think I understand why we might be here, and blah blah blah, and he's
so we got these two characters. The first character is it's Alex.
Yeah, Alex.
And is played by Jeremy Steele. And we have a character named Ed, who is played by Scott Galbraith, who was the co-writer of the movie.
And he's been in a lot of movies from the same company called like Justice Films or something like that.
Yeah, which is owned by Sean Justice.
And he's also a magician, not in like an occultist, because that would go against his religion, but like an actual like a stage like magician.
He's not a wizard, Harry.
No, not that. Except that goes against his probably Christian fundamentalist opinions. But yeah, he apparently I actually read an interview with him, about him or with him, and he was talking about how he got into like magic when he was just like really, really young and pursued it, and he's pretty much like a professional musician as well, magician, as well as acting and writing in these religious based films, including this one, which I gotta say, I sometimes wonder if these Christian films and shows are like sort of in on the joke a little bit, like they're almost kind of making fun of themselves somewhat. Like, yeah, we're Christians and we're doing like this cheesy thing, but like it's also serious at the same time because we're trying. Like, for example, like Bible Man, right? So like,
yeah,
they showed. I saw like a trailer for like one of the, I don't know which one it was, like 2007 or something,
yeah.
and like it had like, I said like more action, more spandex, nonstop scripture. So it's like
That wasn't that
I'm not,
fake trailer you sent me, was it?
no,
No, okay.
no, that was no.
All right.
This was an actual trailer for one of the. I think it was called. I don't know what it was. What was Shadow of Doubt or something like that. And so like I doubt that like they would write in like more spandex and like thinking that was being serious. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so I think.
Well, the tone of those movies is not serious. It's more like in a way, it's kind of like the Adam West Batman sort of feel,
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it is definitely.
Yeah.
But they try to at the same time like promote, or indoctrinate, people with their, their particular, version of Christianity, whatever. But they're doing it in like a jokey kind of way. I don't know. I just wonder if like, because there's no rule that says that Christians can't have a sense of humor. Although, right wing Christians, that's a different story. But like, so I just wonder sometimes if like they were like, yeah, what if we did like a Christian version of Saw? So it's kind of like they're sort of like winking at it, while at the same time they want to like promote their own like faith-based type of ideology. I don't know. It just seems weird to me that like if anyone were to actually make this and think to themselves like, yeah, it would be really cool if we made a Christian version of Saw, but without any of the violence and just all the talking, and then have like this weird subplot going on where like like Roddy, was it Robbie? What's his name? I forgot.
Roddy Piper.
Sorry, Roddy Piper is like the boss of some like newspaper, and he wants like one of his top reporters to do this story about, quote, the graying of America.
Well, it's not one of his top reporters. It's his it's his like social reporter who he's trying to get to move up and everything. And okay, here's one of my issues with casting.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing major, but Sherry Morris, who plays the role, is like a middle-aged woman herself, and he keeps referring to her as kid.
Yeah,
and right. It's like she's playing like this new like this go-getter reporter that wants to be the next big star at the paper. It's not usually. I mean sometimes it happens, but it's not usually somebody who's in their like 40s or 50s.
Right.
Yeah, that's just
maybe she got a late start in her career. No, I don't think so. I think it's just they just like, yeah, sure. Like, hey kid or whatever. It's like I think she's like 5 years younger than you, but like
basically I think she is. She's like 5 or 10 years younger than Roddy Piper. So it's like
so he's like the boss, and he's like, I had this conversation with my dad the other day, and he was talking about like the graying of America, like things used to be like black and white. And that's the other thing. So like not to go on a too big of a tangent. That's the other thing I've noticed in a lot of these Christian based films is that they try to like ride this line of like where they don't want to outwardly criticize like progressive causes, but they kind of want to undercut them a little bit by saying like, oh, this is part of the graying of America. Like things used to be black and white, and now things are more gray. And then they'll throw in like, yeah, like equal rights for people. So like it's meant to sort of like hint that like that's a bad thing. Like they won't outwardly say it, but like that's the implication that like like black people having rights is bad. Gay people having rights is bad.
They're talking in there, and he's like something about like, oh, we have electric cars and this green new energy and all this other stuff, and he's like saying stuff like that, and he's like, well, so the world should be good, right? Almost implying that the electric cars and things of that nature are bad, and it's somehow unreligious.
Yeah, that's part of the right wing Christian ideology, of course. Is progress is bad. Non-Christians having rights is bad. Non-white Christians especially is bad. We need to be ruled by an iron fist with Christ as the head of the government, and anyone who's a non-believer is automatically sent to like the concentration camps and killed, that kind of thing. That's what they believe. That's they're sick individuals, but that's you're allowed to be sick in this country. But anyway, so and so that's kind of the implication there, like, because he specifically even mentions like, equal rights for most people. So he says most people. So by that is implying that Christians now they don't have equal rights, because this kind of reminds me of like the people who are like hate trans people, where they're like, oh, like they want equal rights now, so that means that like real women are having less rights. It's like, but rights aren't like a finite resource. Like, it's not like something that you quantify, like, oh, we have 10 donuts and now half of those donuts go to this. Like, that's not how that works.
You can't go to Rights R Us and buy your rights. It's
no,
like
it doesn't.
store
Well, I
down
guess
the
you
street.
can buy rights.
Right Mart. Maybe Rite Aid. Maybe you can get them at Rite Aid. I don't know.
Oh, Rite Aid, as in RIGHT. Yeah, I like that. Rite Aid. So anyway, so that's the implication, and then he's like, yeah, if you don't want to do this, I guess you could go back to your fashion or wedding, wedding like reviews or whatever
fashion
type of thing.
Things, whatever it is, yeah.
And so she's like, okay, she'll do it, because that's her shot to, kind of move up in the company or whatever. So she talks. Her first interview is like a pastor or a priest at church her mom goes to, and she's basically asking him like, oh, so do you think that like, God's not present anymore or whatever type of thing, and he's like, well, this country's never been like a Christian nation, like in the sense of like a theocracy. So like, at least that's good. At least the movie's not promoting like a theocracy. I guess like,
I want to point something out here too.
Sure.
We never see her mom. We hear her on the phone at one point.
Yeah, and she's alive because she said she goes to the church. So,
okay, so the thing here it seems like there's kind of like almost like a strained relationship between this woman and her mom, like they're distant in a way. And the whole point of this movie is talking about how you need to reconcile, differences in your lives with people you care about and things of that nature and be close to each other. Yet the bad writing of this movie didn't have a scene at all where the mother and the daughter were together, which would have like highlighted that.
Yeah, point. That's a really great point. And also too, so like, to go back into like the main plot. Well, I guess they're both main plots, but like where the two guys are in the in the like the warehouse or whatever. So Ed, he's a journalist, and he's actually been writing a story, or he has written about this quote. This person called the Reconciler, who abducts people and then he forces them to reconcile their differences, or he's just gonna like let them starve to death, I guess. And which is great. And then so, but the Alex is a graphic designer, and then this woman, I forgot her name. She's a journalist. So I'm sitting there thinking, okay, so maybe the Reconciler is gonna like kidnap her as well. And then he's gonna like force them to like basically like write a story about him.
And like, he's a reporter, and
right,
as far as we know at this point, and it's like what I'm saying is like it's like, why make him a reporter and have another subplot about a reporter that honestly did not need to be in this movie?
No,
at all.
Yeah, the B plot really just fizzled out. It didn't have anything. Like they didn't really. Well, they did connect.
They vaguely connected it later, and I've got issues with that too.
Which didn't make any sense either. Yeah. I didn't understand that. That was anyway. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I was thinking, okay, maybe this Reconciler is gonna like force them to do like a media blitz on them, because you got two reporters and you got a graphic designer. So I was thinking, okay, they're gonna make them make like a website dedicated to this Reconciler and like put it out there. Although 2014, you still had things like Instagram and stuff that you would make a video, not a website, because people don't really go to websites anymore. But no, fine, no matter. And so she's like going around, like the priest or pastor or whatever is basically saying like, yeah, we've never been a theocracy, but we have been like a Christian cultural, which is not true at all. Where it's like, oh, most of our founding fathers actually believed in God. It's like, yeah, they believed in God. Doesn't mean that they were Christians. In actuality, a lot of them were Freemasons, and
some
at
of
that
them,
point in time,
some of them weren't even religious, though. Some of them were more atheistic and stuff too. But
some of them were atheistic. Benjamin Franklin was a deist, which basically means that you believe in God, but you believe that God created everything and then pretty much just sat back and just allowed creation to just unfold naturally on its own. So there's no
which meant that you could spend years in France and have sex with a bunch of women in like some kind of cult-like settings.
Well, because there's no
that's
like
what Benjamin
morality.
Franklin did.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, he was obviously known as a philanderer, and very much so. That's why he liked going to France so much. Is because France had a little bit more liberatory, view when it came to romance and the like. But so he was a deist. George Washington was a Freemason. A couple of the other founding fathers back then, it might not seem like a big deal now. Back then, though, being a Freemason was seen as being like completely opposed to being a Christian. So to be a Christian and a Freemason at the same time would pretty much like all the other Christians would pretty much just denounce you as not being a real Christian, even if you yourself were. Such as George Washington, he was both. But the thing is, it's like at that time he would have been considered like a super liberal, progressive Christian.
Yeah.
If he was like in our time, and then was up to like our modern standards of like liberalism and progress or whatever, he would be like considered like, not when it came to like issue of slavery and stuff like that, but like I'm talking about just like the ideological grounds. So, but again, like, you don't, right-wing Christians don't really care about facts and history. So that's a given, right? So, so he's like, yeah, you probably shouldn't talk to me though, like, or any other religious leaders. You should probably like talk to like, regular people, that type of thing. It's like, okay. So then she goes to like the soup kitchen and she's just talking to this Asian dude who of course has the stereotype of like, my family came from a place where it was illegal to believe in God, because like, God forbid, you're just like an Asian dude who just like has like a normal upbringing. You know what I mean? Like
my thing with this though is these are regular people, quote unquote.
Yeah.
But they all seem to be parishioners at this church.
Yeah, exactly.
If you want to get a broad stroke of the religious beliefs, maybe talking to these different religious leaders would start first, but then talking to people at each of these, each of these congregations would make more sense than talking to just people from one church.
Exactly. Maybe they only have one church in that town. Maybe that's it.
No, she was going to go talk to other religious leaders, so there's obviously...
Yeah, but you can't do that because it's a Christian film. You're not allowed to talk to other religious people, so you gotta make sure that you're...
Well, even talking to like a Baptist and then a Methodist preacher would have...
No, you gotta only stick to your particular sect of Christianity, let alone not talk to other religions like a rabbi or an imam or a Hindu priest or whatever. Anyway, so she's talking to this Asian dude. He didn't really say what country he was from, so I'm thinking possibly China, because I know that they have laws there pretty much against, well, I don't know if they have laws against being a Christian, but they're, it's really, they do have to kind of write a fine line between that, because anything that the government...
It kind of is, I mean, I think you can in private, but it's not like...
It's very, so I'm guessing that, or maybe North Korea, but it's much harder to get out of North Korea than China, because Korea, you're not actually even allowed to leave the country at all.
Yeah,
China,
I think
you can.
Yeah, but I mean, then he implies, because he came from a place where you weren't allowed to like really practice your religion, that he's kind of implying that America's becoming that, which is far from the truth. But
yeah, because he's implying that like, because enforced atheism of China is the same thing as people choosing to not be religious in America. No, that's not the same thing at all. It literally isn't, because the Chinese Communist Party literally had to force people to not be religious, not just Christian, of any religion, like traditional, like Confucianism, like Taoism, like it was like, like the spirituality of, like, let's say the Kung Fu masters, they killed a lot of the Kung Fu teachers because there was sort of like a cult of personality. It was sort of built up around some of them, where like their students believed like they even had like sort of like mystical powers and shit like that. So the government was like, no, we got to nip that shit in the bud real quick. So they would kill. So like it wasn't just like persecution of Christians; it was Muslims. Even to this day, they're throwing Chinese Muslims into concentration camps in China because they believe that they're like basically an ideological threat. So it's like, it's all, what he's saying is not wrong, but again, it's like the implication of like, oh well, we're losing God in this country, so we're going to become just like China. No, like, you're an idiot.
And that, I mean, like I said, that whole storyline is just so pointless to the rest of the story.
The time filler.
It's time filler, and it's over preaching. The thing is like, I think this movie would have been better served to focus more on the Reconciler itself, you know, as opposed to this other story that has no connection whatsoever to the Reconciler.
No, it doesn't. Literally, see, that's what I was thinking, that it was gonna, like, the two subplots were going to merge at some point. That's what I was thinking. And no, it was a completely different thing. So yeah, you're right. She's like 5 years younger than Roddy Piper's character, and yet he keeps calling her kid for some reason. Fine.
Yeah.
She, she talks to this dude. I think that's pretty much it for her. Then she talks to someone else at the end, and that's pretty much her story. But like the Saul part, so Alex finds like something in his coat or whatever, and it's like a key.
Yeah.
So then there's like this trunk that's right next to them that they never noticed for some reason until this moment, and they open it. And then there's like a body in there. I'm like, okay, this is starting to get dark. All right, it's kind of cool actually. Let's see what happens. And like, no, unfortunately, the guy's alive. And it's Alex's twin brother, who's like, he's like super religious.
Named James, played by Jourdan Steele, who is Jeremy Steele's brother.
Yeah, I figured they were probably siblings. And basically their reconciliation is that they were raised super religious, and then Alex, turned his back on God or whatever, according to his brother, and that, and he's like, I didn't turn my back on God. I just wanted to do my own thing. And, he's like, that's not good enough. You have to follow rules and regulations, so it's like, so we got like the whole like, what do you call it? Like a disagreement among Christians, where you got one group of Christians who believes that you're, quote, saved by grace, which basically means you can do whatever you want. And well, that they won't say that, but that's what it amounts to. They won't say it like that because it sounds bad, but it's like, either way you slice it, that's pretty much what it comes out to, no matter what. Because basically, as long as you believe in Jesus Christ, that he died for your sins, and he was resurrected on the third day, and he sits on the right hand side of the Father, etc., then you're good. You're clear, kind of thing. You should do the right thing.
I beg to differ. Michael sits at the right hand.
Well, that's Catholic.
Yeah.
Protestant Christianity. I'm talking about, well, because Catholicism also has, you do have to do some works. It's not just a clean.
Oh yeah.
You're good. You're good for life. Type of thing. Whereas Protestant Christianity, at least the evangelical branches, it's pretty much like you're washed in the blood of Christ. You're good to go, pretty much. And yeah, they'll tell you should do the right thing, you should do good, but that's not what's going to get you into heaven or paradise. Your belief, in basically the Trinity and all these, different doctrines, that's what's going to get you into heaven. So even if you are a bad person and you believe all that stuff, you're good to go. Whereas, some of the other fundamentalist Christians, they might believe that, but they're also on the side of like, you still have to follow all the laws, and so you can't, you don't, basically you're not getting, like, you're not going to have a get out of hell free card type of thing, which then unfortunately undercuts their entire belief system, because if they do believe that they are saved by grace alone and not through deeds, then you can't have it both ways, essentially, right? So technically, from Alex's perspective, he's actually correct when it comes. I mean, I think it's all bullshit personally, but like, because like, like this whole idea, like I've heard this story so many millions of times, where it's like they'll literally say this, like some of these evangelical like pastors will literally say this, is that if you have a guy who was like a serial killer, or he murdered people, and then on his deathbed, if he's got like 30 seconds of life left, and then if he says that he believes in Jesus Christ, that he was died on the cross, resurrected the third day, all that stuff, he's going to go to heaven for that last 30 seconds of sincere belief.
Yeah,
which
I'm not sure if a lot of faiths believe that, sadly.
Right. So, but then if you have another guy who's been good his entire life, he's been good to animals, he's been good to humans, he's been good to the environment, he's pretty much like lived his whole life basically just trying to do good or offset the bad that he's putting out there through like consumption and all this kind of stuff. If he's not a believer, not just not a believer in Christianity, but like just that specific version of Christianity, and he's going to hell. And like, that's bullshit. I'm sorry. Like, you have to be brainwashed to actually make that make sense to you. That's how I feel. But anyway, so they're going off on this whole thing. That's what they need to reconcile, is because Alex's brother is a piece of shit who is mad that like his brother dared to like just be a regular person and not be like a total judgmental asshole. And then you've got Ed, who's having to sort of like play like referee, between them, and try to like get each person's story, because he's a journalist, so he needs to like report on the facts or whatever. And so that's anyway. So that's like the one thing. But then we get like flashbacks of like some of the other projects, if you will.
That basically we have this one story with these two cops who wake up in a garage or something inside of a car, and they're locked in the car and they're fighting, and we don't really find much about that, except for the fact that the one is resentful of the other because she's been on the force longer than he has, and he got the promotion and she didn't. And then we have another story with a father and son who wake up in the middle of a state park or something, and they're chained together, and they need to escape by finding a bag, like a backpack full of like, it's got the keys for the chain and all the stuff they need, and their cell phones and whatnot. Because of course nobody has their cell phones, or they don't work either way, So
yeah, the reconciler, he or she, you don't really know what gender.
It's got really good ways of cutting off cell reception. So
of course.
So anyways, the cops basically end up before the end of the movie, reconciling and deciding to stay partners and whatnot. We also have a kind of another plot with with their boss,
yeah,
who is investigating the reconciler, things. He's got one of his little, Charlie Day on It's Always Sunny, like, boards with a bunch of, like, pictures of things that, are connected. Conspiracy theory board. We've got,
yeah,
we got that going on. And then, it's just, he ends up finding the boys, because their mom called and said that the twins were missing. Which
it's bizarre.
Okay, so Alex hasn't talked to his parents or his brother in a long time. Why would his mom even know he's missing?
Yeah, exactly. And plus, too, they're missing for 3 days. So they've been in this warehouse room for 3 straight days. Like, this is like a felony. They're sitting there like debating, like, well, people really aren't sure if it's like, like if his intentions outweigh the. I'm like, dude, no, like this person is literally committing crimes. You can't just abduct people for days on end, expose them to the elements just because you want them to reconcile their differences. That's not how, and the fact that this is a Christian movie and they're trying to imply like debating whether or not you should do this. I'm like, this is why, like, again, like I have a very hard time trusting right-wing Christians. It's not because of like a prejudice. It's because like this is how they think, and it's creepy. It's like you guys can't be like talking about like whether or not you should do something like this. Like this is not even like this should not even like cross your mind or like even be something to like debate amongst yourselves, let alone make a movie about it and like to the public that anyone can see, because that's gonna make people wonder like, okay, like if I see one of these people, I'm gonna start wondering if they're like gonna do this to me. If they find out like I've got issues with someone, they're gonna be like,
yeah,
you need to reconcile in the name of Christ or whatever. It's like, no, that's weird. But yeah, so you got the cops or detectives. They reconcile their differences, which I guess is cool.
Yeah,
and then
the dad and the son reconcile theirs because he ends up he was hiding with the letter that the reconciler leaves letters to these people.
Oh yeah,
and
that's right.
And he was like finally reads what it says to his son, being honest for the first time in his probably life with his son.
Yep.
And they reconcile, and everything's hunky-dory there, I guess.
But here's the thing. What I love about that is so like they're like climbing up this really dangerous mountain where just like the edge literally just falls.
Oh yeah, and the sun almost dies.
Sun almost died, but like there's like hardly any urgency to it. Like his dad's like, all right, I'm just gonna pull you up there, buddy. And it's just like, is that really like the way you would react if like son's like hanging off a cliff? Like, I mean, like I guess he's a soldier, so maybe he was trained to like not freak out in a situation like that. But it seemed very, no pun intended, anticlimactic. Sorry, the dad joke.
At least their story didn't end right there on a cliffhanger.
Oh, exactly. But it was just like, he's like, I got you, buddy. I got you. I'm like, okay, that was a weird, like, all right. And then for some reason, the kid passes out, maybe from just adrenaline, or not adrenaline, that'll keep you awake, but like maybe just from the.
And then he's hugging him really weirdly too. I'm sorry, but
yeah, he picks him up and he's just carrying him around now.
Yeah.
It was weird, and he's like, I got you, buddy. And like, which is so weird because he kind of looks like my 7th grade world history teacher who was also a soldier, and he had like really big muscles.
Oh, really?
And stuff. His face kind of looked like this guy, not totally, but a little bit. And so I thought that was kind of funny actually, because he even kind of had a similar personality. Although my teacher was pretty nice and cool, but like I don't know, it was interesting. But so he carries his son, and they're gonna find like the keys, blah blah blah. They reconcile. So now the only group that needs to reconcile is the Alex and his brother, and the reporter has to like, I guess, reconcile her faith in God or some whatever.
Because that story has no point. Anyways,
it doesn't. But they want to make it a point for some reason, and then so I'll just go with hers first because it's
go ahead.
Pointless. We just get that one out of the way. So she meets like this lady, like this older woman. I guess, who goes to this church or something, and she's like, pretty rich, I guess. She's got this really beautiful garden, and she's sitting out there on a bench, and then she's like, I got some lemonade if you want, whatever. By the way, this lemonade's not spiked with anything. She's not gonna wake up like in a warehouse herself or anything like that. But and she's basically
that would have been a better plot.
It would have been. No, it would have been if she was the reconciler, that would have been like a total twist. Not like a Mike's Hard Lemonade twist, but like it would have been interesting, but no, no dice on that one. And again, so we go back into like the sort of like saved by grace alone subplot, because she's like, oh, I haven't lived a saintly life, type of thing, like, implying that she was like kind of like, a rebel when she was, a young woman, that type of thing or whatever. But okay, so we're getting back into that, that whole idea. Fine, I guess. And, she's talking about how, her husband, was very successful businessman, did quite well for himself and all this stuff. But then when he died, she turned to God, and then she was like, that's what people do, though. It's like when things are going good, they forget about God, and then when things are bad, they turn to God, and things are okay for a while after that, but then over time, so she's talking about basically saying like World War II and how like the struggles that people went
She didn't
through.
seem old enough to have been alive during
no she doesn't, but yeah, especially even in 2014, which is only like 9 years ago, but whatever. And she's saying that you had to keep your faith in God regardless of the circumstances. Again, that's not a new concept. Every religion teaches that. Quran mentions that very many times throughout the book. It's a known thing, and which again, fine if that's what you want to put in your movie, whatever. And then which is weird though, because so then she undercuts herself though, because she's like, I want to show you something. She brings out an old newspaper that she obviously saved, because this is an old article when she looks like 15 years, 20 years younger.
Yeah.
Saying like, local Christian woman donates $3 million fortune to Christian charities. So you can't just be a regular charity. It's got to be specifically a Christian charity. And
it doesn't name what charity it is either. It's not like it's, a specific church or a specific, organization.
God forbid, like, Muslims, pagans, Buddhists get help, fuck them, right? Only
but even that, it's just like it's such a generic, just bad writing with a generic name.
Oh, it is. It just says like, Christian charities. It says plural. So they don't even know what they are. Yeah. But not only that, the point I was gonna make, that's still a good point, but the point I was gonna make was, so she's like not humble at all. She saved this article that from like 15, 20 years ago. And it's like, shows it to her like, oh, look at this. I donated $3 million. I'm like, but that goes against everything you've just been talking about.
It's basically implying that, what the best thing you can do for life and to be a good Christian is to just donate your money to Christian charities. But if you don't, you suck.
Yeah, and you suck, and also you gotta make sure that you show it off to everyone how great a person you are. What? And like, plus two,
the better thing would be to donate it anonymously and not tell anybody.
Of course, exactly. Of course, they'll make the argument of like, well, I was doing this just to like inspire other people to do it. So if they see my face, then no, that's bullshit.
No, because what would inspire them too is if you open up the newspaper and it says $3 million were anonymously donated to these charities.
Yeah, exactly. It's a weird thing. I remember it too, because like again, like you want to go like talk about Jesus. So Jesus said to pray in the privacy of your own basically like a closet, essentially. Like because the Jews prayed in public, which I don't really have anything, there's nothing wrong with that. Muslims do the same thing. But when it came to his generation, it was like a lot of people were doing it to basically keep up appearances, and which kind of like going to church, same thing. But anyway, no matter. And basically like trying to outdo each other like how long they're praying. So we even have this with, the beginning of the, the Babi or the Baha'i faith, where, the Shiite Muslims would pretty much try to outdo each other. Like how long they got to stay in prayer, make sure that, they're the last person standing or kneeling, everyone else leaves, because that way they're going to be like, the best believer or whatever, which,
whoever's the most pious wins, basically.
If you're doing that, though, you're undercutting your own thing, because God is not going to reward that, because you're just being an asshole at that point. And actually, so like, so Jesus, to undercut that a little bit was like, all right, like when you guys pray, which again, all of his followers were fellow Jews. He was also a Jew himself. But again, that's another point. But that's besides the conversation. But and so he's like, yeah, when you guys pray, I want you to pray in private, so no one can see you, so no one can say like, oh my God, this guy was sitting in prayer for 3 hours. Oh, he must be such a saintly, blah blah blah. So for her to be like, oh, check out this article about me where I donate $3 million, it's just like, okay, just undercut your entire philosophy there. But that's fine if that's what you want to do, I guess.
But again, that's what you do when you're a superfluous character who doesn't need to be in the movie.
Exactly. So yeah, to your point, exactly. It's bad writing, pointless writing, doesn't need to exist. I mean, the reporter doesn't need to exist, but she definitely doesn't need to exist at all. It's just a complete throwaway character. Because she makes no appearance or anything she said makes no appearance, like later on, like in the movie. So yeah, finally we get back to Alex and his brother. I always forget his brother's name.
But earlier in this story though too, she did meet with a little girl.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Who was really creepy as hell, and said that she almost died and then met Jesus, and Jesus said that the reason that he let her live was so that he could meet this woman or something, which is really weird. And then just the girl, no offense to her, I mean, she's probably a nice young person. It's just she just came off as like creepy.
Well, I mean, yeah, I would be too if I like. Well, that's the other thing too is like
the way she did her line delivery, because that's the other thing. The acting in this movie is.
It's I mean, like
it's like third grade play.
Ed and Alex's brother were decent, I think.
Yeah.
And they were like, the ones pretty much having like the bottle episode portion of the film. And for those who don't know what that means, that basically means you're like in one place for the whole episode or movie or whatever. And so I guess Saw would technically be considered like a bottle movie, essentially. Yes. Because it's all takes place for the most part in that same warehouse. Mm-hmm. But this is just one room in the warehouse, let alone the entire warehouse. But whatever. And so they basically reconcile their shit through the help of Ed, because he's like the journalist, so he's got the training on how to like, get both sides of the story without making the other person interrupt, the other person, just let them say their piece, type of thing, again, because he's a journalist, so he knows what he's doing. And well, a good journalist knows that's what you're supposed to do, not just completely editorialize, but, so he's pretty good journalist for, being stuck in a warehouse room with two random dudes after being chloroformed. But anyway, and through a religious person who wants people to reconcile, which is kidnapping and it's a felony. But that's
it's like Flicker Stick said, chloroform the one you love.
That's a creepy lyric. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm gonna look into those guys and see if they kidnapped anyone before.
No,
what a shame. It used to be, they were such a good band, and like they just fizzled out as soon as they're
back together now.
Oh, they are? Okay.
Yeah.
Because they only did like 2 albums or 3 or whatever, and then that was anyway. That's a whole other
that's another story.
Check them out; they're a good band. I want to buy the world a Coke. That's a good song too. So and before they completely reconcile, though, we get this thing. Or I don't know if it was before or after, where the reporter comes home and it turns out that her husband and son are the ones that were chained together. So does she know that this thing happened to them? Like it was not clear.
I don't know. And on top of that, there is no way in hell that could be their biological son.
No, it's not.
Because he looked like he was like part Asian or Hispanic.
I wonder if he was like related to one of the characters. Because like, I'm not saying anything, but so far you had 3 Asian characters in this movie. I'm not saying that's a bad thing.
No, but I mean, I don't know if he was Asian or Hispanic or what he was, but it's interesting too, though, because like the guy who plays the dad has the same last name in real life as the twin Asian boys, but he's not. I don't think he's related. But it's a fake last name too, so it's like his stage name. So
so they're like wrestling and like doing like this weird like father son, which again, that would be something you would do with like maybe if your son was like 12 or 13, but this kid looks like he's like 16 and 17 maybe.
Yeah, or maybe 18.
Or I don't know. It just seemed like something you would do with like a 10-year-old, like not someone who's like 15, 16. I don't know, whatever. Fine. So they're like wrestling around like in the hallway and she's like, we're gonna go get a bite to eat. You wanna join us? And she's like, no, I'm okay, whatever. You guys. But I think she might know because she said something like, as long as you don't get into some kind of crazy something. I don't know what. I don't remember
but I mean,
what she said.
Even if she knows the connection, it's like out of nowhere. It's like watching one of those movies or plays where like they reveal the killer, and it's just like, oh, it's the janitor that we saw in that one scene who has nothing to do with the rest of the plot in the movie.
Yeah, exactly. And so then she picks up the Bible, of course, and then there's a letter in the Bible from her mom, I guess.
Oh yeah, we didn't actually hear her on the phone. It was all a letter. Yeah.
Yeah, so like I guess she knew that her daughter at some point would pick up the Bible. I don't know how she would know that, but whatever. And then
it's probably just a letter that she put in there when she gave her the Bible, expecting her to open it up someday. You know what I mean?
Right. And then basically saying like how proud of her she is and all this kind of stuff. And then she's like crying, tears of gratitude, or whatever. And then so I'm starting to wonder, is she the reconciler? Is her mom the one that's done all this stuff? Like, I don't know. Weird. And like, because if her grandson and son-in-law were like one of the first people that did this to, and then it was like the detectives, and then it was these two, because like a lot of them have to do with like people being religious or not religious, or according to their.
But no, she
whatever.
wasn't.
I shouldn't be dwelling on that, because again, this whole subplot was meaningless, did not need to exist, like you said. But yeah, so they finally. So like, do you want to talk about the reveal here? Because I've been talking a lot, but I think
yeah. So basically, we go back to our twin boys and Ed, and Ed had a cane most of the time, and all of a sudden he doesn't need it. And he unlocks the door magically, and reveals that he was sent there to help all these people. Basically by the reconciler, that he's not really named Ed, and that he's not a reporter per se. And then he's basically, I think, implying that he's like a guardian angel or an archangel or something. And then and so basically it's revealed that the reconciler is God.
So God kidnaps people.
Yes.
And forces them into like a deep sleep, and then awakens them into like precarious situations where death is a possibility.
Yes.
Wow. That's interesting. I gotta hand it to them though. These Christian movies are fantastic. Like not in a way that they think they are. Like, at least again, they might be in on the joke a little bit. I don't know. That's I can't read minds, but like, I mean, God can read minds. Apparently, he kidnapped people too, which is fine. And I mean, it's God. I guess God is not bound by the same laws that he gives the universe, which, according to actually all the scriptures. It says he is bound to the same laws, but fine, no matter. And because it would be unfair of him to to
ask
to
of
apply
people
laws.
something different than what he would obey himself.
But fine, I guess if you wanna change the meaning of things, I mean that's kind of par for the course with these people. But anyway, no matter. And sorry, I'm being very sarcastic today. And so God kidnaps people. He reads minds, obviously reads minds. And it's okay because it's God doing it. So it's not a person, not a human being, who is kidnapping these people and forcing them to reconcile. Because that's the thing too. So in the warehouse, it says that they have enough food for like 5 days and supplies.
Yeah.
And after that, it's it. So if they don't reconcile within 5 days, then again, I think if you're trapped with someone for 5 straight days, I think most people, the vast majority of people would probably at least fake being reconciled so they can just get out of the situation.
Yeah, but if it's God doing it, he knows you're faking. So
that's
it's
right.
Like,
God knows it. But see, if it was a person, a human being,
if it was somebody with like some surveillance cameras, you could probably, all of a sudden you're gonna become Laurence Olivier and able to act your way out of the situation.
Yeah, so, like at some point you would learn to at least somewhat fake sincerity.
But you can't really fool God, so it's like
no, you can't. So if God's the one that's kidnapping you and forcing you to reconcile with someone that you don't want to, and you're gonna die. So if you don't, so God's gonna kill you. So which you kind of guess does track if you go like the Old Testament stuff, because God kills a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I guess that kind of, then again though, if you actually talk to like Jews and the rabbis, they have different interpretations than the literal meaning. So that's
it's more metaphoric, I think. Yeah. So
too far for that. That's the reason too why it's very dangerous when fundamentalist right-wing Christians read the Old Testament. It's because they don't have that same tradition of interpretation that the Jews have. So all they go by is just the literal meaning, not even translation of a text. They don't even read Hebrew for the most part. So they don't even know what it really says in its original language even. So they're just getting like a Christian, translation of a text. And they're just like, it says right here in the Old Testament. It's like, okay, but what did the rabbis say about this verse? Like, I don't care what the rabbis say, I care about what Jesus says. Okay, but Jesus didn't interpret the entire Old Testament. So that doesn't
But then they go to church on Sunday and listen to what their pastor tells them.
Well, I know, but that's the dangerous part about it though, is because they're like, Judaism has like a 5,000-year-old tradition where they can get around some of these like more, I would say, problematic verses in the Bible, the Old Testament. And that way, that means that they're not completely insane, where they're like, oh, it says you got to stone people to death, so we're just going to pick up a stone and throw it at someone. No. But, like, you do have, like, some, like, theocratic Christians who are like, oh, yeah, we should go back to stoning people to death. And it's like, no. Like, it's like, listen to the rabbis. They said, don't do that anymore. We don't do that. Like, but then again, you're trying to reason with people who apparently think it's cool if God kidnaps people and makes them store them in warehouses. So, I don't know what to say about that. But and by the way, when I say this stuff, I'm specifically talking about right-wing fundamentalist Christians. I'm not talking about every Christian, every Catholic, every.
You're talking about extremists more than anything.
I'm specifically referring to these like theocrats who believe that like the Constitution should be replaced by the laws of a literal reading of a literal translation, Christian translation reading of the Old Testament.
Yeah.
That's who I'm referring to here. Not your run of the mill Methodist or Catholic or what have you. These very specific what they call now is Christian fascists. What they call themselves that. That's not me calling them that.
Before we wrap things up here.
Sorry guys.
So there's not many reviews on the Internet Movie Database of this movie.
Oh, I'm so surprised.
Yeah. There are some on Amazon though. So here's a couple of the five-star reviews, because they only go up to 5 on Amazon. It's weird. They go up to 10 on IMDb, but 5 on Amazon. And Amazon owns IMDb. So
if you want to do a half, you got to do 2.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Whatever.
Yeah. So I just don't know why they have 2 different systems of grades here. So it's like...
Yeah.
So we have here's one I'll just read from D. written in July of 2016. A refreshing and well done family film. This is a great movie and a great family movie. It was refreshing to be able to enjoy a solid story without to mute out of language or fast forward through questionable situations. If you know what I mean. Smiley face.
Okay.
It's also a great tool to open up a conversation where maybe there has been tension or misunderstanding, to give God a chance to mend hearts. Personally, it renewed my hope in our assignment to get the word of God's love for us and for those who have yet to experience his reconciliation.
Okay. Easily entertained.
So, here's another one. Family movie indeed. This is from Terrence and Serena Hale.
It's family. Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Kidnapping. Go ahead.
It says, family movie indeed. I received a free copy of this movie for my honest review. I don't know what that means. The Reconciler is a great movie that kept my interest from moment one. It was cool how some of the stories connected and the music, gosh, it made you really think that you were watching a truly scary movie. No, it didn't. The ending was unexpected. I totally did not see it coming.
I did.
Yeah, I did from... Anyways. God is mentioned in the movie, but not being shoved down anyone's throat. If anything, it shows that he wants to be the reconciler and help us reconcile with ones we need to have relationships with.
Yeah. Easily pleased.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta hand it to them. At least they, it doesn't take much, to entertain them and please them. So I guess that's a good thing. Yeah. And they obviously don't see very many scary movies, which that might be a good thing too. They got maybe some innocence and some purity to them that they haven't been jaded like we have, where this was not scary at all. It was almost funny to watch. And to say that God's not being shoved down people's throats, well, they must be, again, inundated with that happening all the time, that when they see this is seen as tame in comparison to what they normally hear.
Which brings me to the two different covers for the DVD that I've seen.
It's like you showed me two different
posters for the thing, which were the covers for the DVD. One, it says The Reconciler, and it's got this ominous character in a hat and a trench coat on the bottom, and then you've got some of your stars at the top, and it looks like, oh, this is a scary horror movie. And then you have another one where you've got three of your actors at the top, like, smiling with this, like, really fancy, upbeat logo that says Reconciler. It doesn't say The Reconciler. And it says, when your only hope is God. And then it's got some random guy who's not in the movie.
What?
On the bottom, standing in front of a road with his arms, stretched out to the sky, and the people in above are like in these clouds and stuff, and it's all like it's like happy. It makes it look like this really happy family movie.
Yeah.
It's really neither one of these things.
No, it's not. Well, I wonder if maybe they did like reshoots. Maybe that person was in the movie originally. And
no, I think it's just sometimes you'll have people on posters that aren't in the movie. Just okay. He's just a random dude with his arms stretched open wide.
That's hilarious.
He's not in any of the stories in the movie.
Wow.
Yeah. But it just makes it look like this happy family movie that it really isn't. I don't know.
No,
but it's just like I think. I mean, But I mean, then again, I mean, this movie is kind of hard to market. So it's like,
yeah, how do you market this movie? Because you're trying to push like a certain particular version of Christianity, but you're also trying to make it into a quasi suspense horror film. So like you're pretty much like not pleasing anybody in any market with this movie, except for like people like us who watch these things to review.
And all the 5-star reviewers on Amazon and whatnot.
Yeah.
But
I wonder if they're paid to give those 5 stars.
I don't know.
Or not paid, but maybe.
Well, no, I mean this like I've looked up many reviews of like Christian movie reviewers, and they act like this is like, you know, like a Marvel movie or something, you know, like it's that great, you know. So, and I mean, I'm not trying to badmouth you know, low budget movies, and I think I think this movie has its points, and for what it is as a Christian movie, it had a point, but it just didn't know how to stick that point. And
it lost its point.
Yeah, and the main thing is, like I said, about 45 minutes of the movie could have been cut out.
Oh yeah,
that was the whole news reporter and Roddy Piper scenes, and you could have beefed things up a little bit, or you could have made this part of some kind of anthology TV series that was like Christian based in a way. Like this could have been like an episode of like a like a Twilight Zone type of Christian TV series, you know?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with a short, like, you know, for example, Werewolf by Night was only about 45 minutes long without the credits. That was fine. Didn't need to be didn't need to be like a long thing. There's not, you know, that's the problem too, is like when they try to stretch things out to be a feature length film, if it doesn't actually warrant that, there's nothing wrong with that. Just make a like, again, I know I go back to Bible Man because I've been watching that recently just for being fun. You know, these episodes, you know, they're like usually around 45 minutes long, you know, 50 minutes maybe. You don't need to make like a whole thing out of it.
Because honestly, if you look at this movie, it's like 2 movies in one.
Yeah.
And if they would have written better the reporter story, that could have been its own little story. This would have been a good anthology series to like air on, like, you know, like some Christian broadcasting channel or something, or on like, you know, like one of these faith-based streaming services.
Yeah.
And
sure.
You know, and you could have had 2 different stories. You even had it where she was married to the father and son from the one story, but they're just in 2 different movies, you know what I mean, and have them kind of overlap.
Yeah.
But the thing is that there were 2 disparate stories that didn't really mesh well together that made this movie not work. Whereas, you know, and this is my, you know, honest, like, critical, non-cynical view of the movie. It's like I wanted this movie to be better than it was.
Oh yeah, totally.
And that's where I got, you know, issues with it. It's like I mean, I think, you know, the world needs your Christian Saw movie, honestly. So. But you didn't do
a good right. One though.
Yeah, you didn't do it right. You didn't stick the landing.
Like, you know, it'd be really cool. It's like, you know, again, if it's Saw, you know, which is like violence, they should have something to do with like the cross and nails, where like the person, basically has to like relive like what happened to Jesus to a certain extent, like not being killed, but like, you know, somebody
suffering on a cross or something. I mean, I could see that too if you're wanting to go more of a PG-13 or something version.
Yeah,
if you're going for
like,
this, you know, G or PG version, which we have here, you know, even that, you know, if you don't even go that way, if you just had more of these stories of the Reconciler, you know, doing his thing, it would have made sense. And, you know, you could have, you know, maybe had all these stories kind of interconnect. They were all in the same warehouse. Something was going on. They were all going on simultaneously, you know, something that made it all work, where it just didn't mesh together. Like none of the movie really fit together.
Yeah. I mean, like I'll give him some pointers here, you know, free of charge. And I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna print out a news article and show it to everyone either, you know, about my good deeds or whatever, you know, like, you know, apparently you're supposed to do. But what I would do is I would say, hey, you know, like, because he mentioned too of like how the movies could overlap. They should make a Christian cinematic universe, a CCU.
Exactly.
And then they have the like all the movies sort of go into each other and then have like their own like Infinity War and Endgame, which is probably like, you know, Satan or whatever, and they got to defeat Satan, you know, kind of thing. And then because like you mentioned too, like how they made those 2 different Hallmark movies that they're like different perspectives of like each sister or whatever. Like, that was like, you know,
something unique.
That was like a unique thing to do.
Why doesn't somebody in the, you know, religious film market do something like that, where it would be interesting to have like a cinematic universe, or something where they, you know, or like I was saying, like an anthology television series, you know, it would be good, you know. And I mean, I hope that maybe somebody's listening to this and gets that idea and makes something really creative and entertaining.
Yeah,
with a good message. You know,
exactly, and that message is not that, you know, it's okay for God to kidnap people and and whatnot. You know,
it's not chloroform the one you love. You know, it's
exactly.
It's more like buy the world a Coke and lie here naked with my girl. You know,
maybe not for a Christian film.
Yeah,
but you know, but yeah, I get the gist.
Yeah. The whole world can just be, you know, boiled down to Flicker Stick songs. I mean,
yes.
But anyways, any other final thoughts here?
No, just other than to apologize. You know, I'm not making fun of Christians.
Yeah.
I'm just talking about, you know, the extremists, you know. And a lot of these movies tend to cater to that kind of, well, maybe not necessarily the group I was talking about, but they do tend to cater to that kind of like very like strict and, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So like, have a little bit of fun. But then to be fair, they make fun of people like me, or maybe not make fun of, but they say people like me are terrible and are going straight to hell. So I think it's a fair exchange to some degree.
And again, you know, like when we're saying things, we're not talking about a generalization of people. We're talking about specific people. So that's
I'm not at all, because like again,
unlike Kanye, you know, and his anti-Semitic,
of course, like anti-Semitism
attack on the world.
But
yeah,
so I grew up, you know, after 9/11. When I grew up, I was a teenager, you know, where everything a Muslim did was like under like a complete microscope. You know, and like if a Muslim robbed the bank, it was like, let's go consult the Quran and see if bank robbery is okay. Like, you know, like, you know.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, or where everybody in that group has to be held accountable for the actions of one person, and you know, it's like, oh, we're gonna ask this random guy on the street what his opinions on this situation are.
Right.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Other than that, no, I'm good. So.
Yeah. So, folks, you know, one thing you can be a good message from this is, you know, try to, you know, reconcile with people in your lives that you love. You know, I mean, you know, obviously there are some people that are beyond, you know, that are just going to pull you down in your life and you don't want to be around them. You know, I'm not saying that you have to, you know, forgive and forget everybody in your life, but it is a good thing to, you know, be kind to each other. Yeah. And, you know, and try to see what we have in common as opposed to what we have, you know, differences in the world. And, also, you know, another good way to, you know, reconcile things in your life is to, donate to our Patreon or our TeePublic, and then write about it in the newspaper and talk about how much you donated.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then
it's okay if you show off that good deed.
Yeah. Also, you know, share our show on social media. That's a really good thing to do. Yeah. Check out all of our social media and everything. You can find it all at alltooreal2.com. And like I said, be kind to each other. Remember that we love you, and bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to All Too Real 2 podcast, a Cullen Park production. Produced and edited by Michael E. Cullen II. Music by Matthew Haas. Subscribe and share the show. Visit us at cullenpark.com.